we got to go to Sean Rose. He's got the stories making the news this week, and it's quite a lot going on, quite interesting discussions going around the cruise ship pair. We're going to hear from Sean. Sean, what's happening around the cruise ship pair this week?
Good evening, viewers. Edrenka, a very interesting discussion. I suspect that we can look at it from a few point of views, but let's look at a few areas of interest. A 15-year boating agreement signed by the BVI Ports Authority and the Norwegian Cruise Line and the Disney Cruise Line on January 17 this year, in my opinion, could very well boost the BVI tourism industry. And this seems to be the sticking point in all of this surrounding the cruise pair project. Now, a number of taxi drivers welcome this idea. However, one taxi driver and the commentator is of a different opinion, and we'll hear from Sam Henry, who doesn't think that the 425,000 passengers that would come to BVI each year would really help much.
Well, Sean, first thing I would like to ask you, or to make a note of, is whether or not only 425,000 tourists going to be coming this year. Because we seem to be under
in 2015.
In 2015, after the pier is built, we seem to be under the impression that that only Disney and Norwegian Cruise Lines are going to be coming to the territory.
And that is far from the truth. In fact, while Norwegian and Disney have a boating agreement for some 15 years, government has communicated to the territory that there will be other boating agreements. In fact, the Communications and Works Minister, Honorable Mark Vanterpool, said that maybe other boating agreements would last for 4 years or so, thereabout. But other cruise lines will be docking, will be boating here in BVI during the next 15-year period, as has been happening over the last couple of years.
Well, that's what I thought. And if two ships are bringing almost 500,000 tourists, and if the other ships bring another 300,000 or 400,000 tourists, then you have almost as many tourists as when cruise tourism was at its peak in 2007 of almost 1 million tourists. So it seems to me like, with the increase of passengers and particularly the guaranteed aspect of the Norwegian and the Disney deal, will serve to help us as well. Now, I have heard from many persons, taxi drivers, that Carnival in particular, that will not be coming. They seem to do more independent tours, whereas the other cruise lines, they have agents that handle their tours for them. So in a sense, perhaps the taxi drivers might lose something on the Carnival side, but hopefully they'll make it up with the other cruise lines and the increase in tourists that's going to be coming, because certainly it appears that there's going to be an increase in tourists.
Exactly, and that's a plausible argument, because many people would obviously ask, what is going to happen to the local taxi driver? And here again, I refer to the point I made earlier, that many taxi operators have said that they welcome this new boating agreement with Disney and Norwegian, because in their opinion, they'll have more passengers to shuttle all around the territory. Now, in terms of the economic spill-offs, remember that government will have more money as well in terms of the payments to be made per head, moving from $7, which has been there for decades, I understand, to some $15. And of course, there are other benefits. But let's say the Minister of Communications and Works, speaking right here on Spotlight with you earlier this year.
You're looking at a good revenue stream, not just for the government in terms of doing the sports and so on all over, but also for the taxi drivers, the vendors and so on.
The stores and restaurants and
so on.
This tour operations and rent-a-cars and rent-a-cycles.
And the key that we were looking for also is Disney, for example, is one of the world's best hospitality companies by far. And they have offered to help us to do hospitality training in the BVI, not just for cruise ships.
So there you go. I mean, you had that conversation with the minister, and you heard him say that there are a number of other benefits to be derived from this boating agreement with Disney and Norwegian. And of course, the fact that the agreement gave a commitment to bring some 425,000 100,000 passengers, the government was able to take that information to the bank and borrow the money that they needed to ensure that you could actually extend and strengthen the cruise pair.
And without that, it seems to me, it's from my understanding, Sean, and you will tell me whether this is accurate or not, that without that berthing agreement from Disney and Norwegian, we wouldn't be able to afford to get the money to build a cruise ship pair.
No, that is like collateral, basically.
Yeah. But the other thing too is that to suggest that there's some malicious intent to harm one tour operator or the other, I think seems to me to be a spurious argument in light of the fact that Carnival, for example, didn't want to pay $15 a head. They made no offers to increase passengers. They didn't offer no assistance at all for helping us to get the pair and the landside development.
Yes.
It seems like around the Caribbean, and I've heard it mentioned by several other tourism officials in the Caribbean region, that Carnival seem to be one of those companies that just want everything for themselves. And I think the $7 a head passenger tax has been in existence for at least 20 years now. It seems like the Caribbean can't get a raise. I remember the last time the Caribbean tried to get a raise, Carnival threatened to stop coming. I don't know if you remember that time, or several years ago. So, I think that we have to go with who's going to help us to get what we need, because without the expansion of the tour, the expansion of the
cruise
pair,
yes,
without the landside development, we can't get the bigger ships, and we're going to fall behind the rest of the region in cruise tourism. So we either in it or we
well, I'm happy you mentioned the Caribbean aspect of it, because according to the Caribbean Tourism Organization, 19 million passengers, cruise passengers, came to the Caribbean in 2013. In fact, they say that the Caribbean is the most popular destination globally, attracting some 45% of the world cruise tourism, pie, basically.
And how many of those 19 million came to the Virgin Islands?
So 19 million going to 22 destinations in the Caribbean. And in terms of the BVI, you had 367,362 coming to the BVI. Just nearby, USVI, they saw 1.9 million visitors during the same period.
Yeah.
And again, when you look at the these figures in a Caribbean context, you have to ask yourself, where is the money going? Because 19 million passengers coming to the Caribbean in 1 year means that we should really be seeing a lot of spill-offs in terms of the cruise dollar.
And all that money is going to the cruise lines, and certainly, I think one of the additional things that was great for me personally in terms of the agreement, because we were on the radio talking about why can't our local people build the pair. Why can't we do the landside development? Certainly we have the capacity. Why can't we make the deal with Norwegian Cruise Line and Disney? And I was pleasantly surprised that we were able to make that deal with Norwegian Cruise Line and Disney, because usually those things don't happen. And so it turned out that now we don't have to have that 40-year lease or 30-year lease of our land. We are getting the $15 per head.
Yes.
We'll pay off the bank.
Of course, there's a rebate of $1.50, I understand, to allow Disney to train, to carry out its training proposal that it offered for your local tourism industry and so on.
So whether we actually worked it that way or it was the will of God, certainly the deal turned out pretty close to how I think we wanted it to turn out. I think we were put in a position where the deal that we made, I think, was a deal that we had to make.
Cromwell, to be fair, looking at these figures, looking at the information, I think it's easy to conclude that the tourism industry in BVI will not shrink, but rather expand. And therefore all the local major players should have a role to play.
Thank you very much for that report, Sean. It's good stuff. I think we need to clarify some of these points, because otherwise the information will go out and we don't get the full picture. So I really appreciate you bringing that up this evening. We're going to take a break.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, the BVI Tourist Board, and CCT Global Communications.